I was a total dreamer. My head was always in the clouds, and most of the time I was thinking about the perfect relationship. I lived, breathed, and ate soap operas, and I had billions of love songs saved on my computer and phone. I read nothing but romance novels in class, and most of my teachers were frustrated with me for never paying attention to anything they said. I was too caught up in my fantasies to care. But before I continue my interesting story, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. If you do, your crush will finally like you back. I was 16 years old and I had a few boyfriends in the past, but we never lasted more than 2 months. I always ended up finding someone else more interesting, and I was frustrated that they did not live up to the characters in my books and movies. I don't even know how this started. It's not like I have psychological issues or anything. I came from a normal household with a mom, dad, grandparent, and siblings. We always had enough stuff, and I was a typical daddy's girl. He bought me anything I wanted.
Valerie, I know I give you everything, but I think it's about time you became a little more independent,
he said to me one night. What do you mean? I asked.
You can start saving money for college. Why not find a part-time job? I think you spend too much time watching soap operas and reading silly books,
he replied. I couldn't believe my dad suggested this. I was his little princess and he wanted me to work? Fend for myself? Ugh. Anyway, I could only work after school and on weekends, so at first it was really difficult to find a part-time job that would accept me. I was just about to give up when the owner of a little coffee shop at a university campus said, "You're hired." Really? I asked, half disappointed because I really wanted to report to my dad that no one would hire me, hoping he'd change his mind. Then the door opened and my heart literally stopped.
Hey, Aiden, come meet your new apprentice. Valerie, this is Aiden. He works here too,
my new boss said. At that moment, I knew I was destined to be right there with the most perfect-looking guy in the universe. What a hunk! Hi, I blushed.
Hello, beautiful.
He winked and I totally melted.
I'll show you the ropes today,
he said, and I felt like this was going to be the best day of my entire life. I was so nervous around Aiden that day that I spilled 3 cups of coffee, one on the kitchen counter, one on a customer, and one all over my new apron. It was so embarrassing. While I tried to wash my apron off in the sink, Aiden approached me with a smile.
Maybe it's just first day jitters. You'll have a better day tomorrow,
he said. Yeah, I guess, I replied, totally hiding the fact that it was all his fault.
Hey, I was wondering, could I have your number? We can talk about work stuff,
he said while laughing. It really was the best day of my life. I gave him my number, and when my shift was over, I skipped all the way home feeling like I was in the clouds. My dad was super happy that I'd found a job too.
That's my girl, she's independent,
he said while he did a ridiculous little dance. That night, Aiden called. We spoke for about 2 hours straight. I found out that he was a student on the same campus where we worked. We were the same age, but he was just super smart and was able to leave high school really early.
Do you have a boyfriend?
He asked suddenly. No, I replied.
Well, I know this is weird because I just met you today, but would you like to go out on a date with me sometime?
He asked. Yes, I said almost too quickly.
Wonderful,
he replied. Aiden and I went to a concert that weekend, and then we went back to his house to watch a movie. It was perfect, and I couldn't stop staring into his eyes. It seemed like he felt the same way about me too. I saw him every day when I worked at the cafe, and we continued dating steadily. Eventually, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said yes. I was pretty certain that he was the one for me. He was perfect. I'm not sure if it's because I rushed into a relationship too quickly, but after a while I began to notice things about him that weren't so perfect. I was in his room one afternoon. We'd just finished playing video games, and I decided I wanted to take a nap. He was right next to me playing on his phone. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, but I couldn't fall asleep. I opened my eyes slightly and noticed that Aiden was browsing through his Instagram feed. There was something strange about this, though. Every single picture was of a super hot model. These girls were unbelievably beautiful. But do you know what? He liked every single picture. I was so angry. I opened my eyes and snatched the phone away from him. Am I not enough for you? I screamed.
What do you mean? I'm only innocently scrolling through Instagram. What is wrong with you?
He asked, trying to make me feel like I was the crazy one. I scrolled some more and saw hundreds more beautiful girls. I checked to see which account he was using and realized that it was a secret account which I did not know about. Why do you even have this account, and why are you keeping secrets from me? I hate you! I screamed and threw his phone on the floor. Then I walked out of his house and went home. we weren't talking to each other for 2 whole weeks. It was extremely awkward at work. Then one day, he sent a dozen flowers to my house with a note that said, "So sorry, can we please talk?" "Ooh, someone sent you flowers. Why don't you invite him over?" my mom said innocently. I was annoyed, but I called him anyway. "Thank you for the flowers. You can come over to my house later to talk." "It's time for you to meet my parents anyway," I said. He agreed. When he came over later, my whole family was waiting to meet him. I never told them about our fight, of course. They were just under the impression that he was my boyfriend. When we were finally alone in my room, he said, "Well, I have a problem. In fact, I'm not even sure if it's a problem. I'm obsessed with models. I love their hair, lips, body, clothes, everything. They're a work of art, really, and I just enjoy staring at them. This doesn't mean I love you any less, but they were sort of there before you. It's always been my thing. Still, you're everything I need." "But if I'm everything you need, then why do you need to follow these models?" I asked. "It's an addiction, I guess. I can't stop," he replied sadly. We decided to give our relationship a second try, but I was still depressed about his addiction. I kept wondering if something was wrong with me. I didn't feel as pretty as these other girls. What could I do so I'd be enough for him? I kept thinking. He was my perfect guy after all. I didn't want to lose him. So one day, I felt like I had no choice. I made a new Instagram account and began thinking of suggestive poses I could post. I got all my beautiful clothes and took hundreds of pictures. I posted the hottest ones and sent the account to my boyfriend. I waited a while for his response. My phone rang. "Whoa, Valerie, I love your new page. I didn't know you could be so hot. Wow," he said. "So you like it?" I asked. "I love it. I'm going to share your page with all my friends. You're going to be a hit. The newest Instagram model in town," he said. I was a little surprised that my boyfriend would want to share my pictures with his friends, but I tried not to think too hard about it. Before I knew it, I had 500 followers and it really fueled my ego. I decided I'd have to post more pictures so I could get more likes and followers, so I did just that. My relationship with Aiden was improving. He seemed to be very proud to be in a relationship with me. Whenever we went out, he'd tell people about my Instagram page and ask them to follow. Then one night after work, he sat next to me while I was drinking a cup of coffee. "Valerie, I think your pictures are getting a bit, boring," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, models don't usually cover everything, if you know what I mean. Your poses are nice and your clothes are too, but have you ever considered modeling swimsuits?" he replied. "Well, I've always been a bit self-conscious and I don't like to show too much skin. You know that, Aiden," I said, disappointed. "Well, I think you should just try them and you'll see how wrong you are. You've nothing to be self-conscious about, trust me. I bought you a few bikinis and you can come over now to try them on. I'll take the pictures," he said. I went over to his house and tried the first one on. It was a black swimsuit. He asked me to pose and he took a few photos. "See, you're so beautiful. I think you should post this right now," he said. I looked at the picture and wasn't fully convinced, but I posted it anyway because I didn't want him to be upset with me. That picture got thousands of likes within a few hours and my followers increased. He convinced me to try on the other suits and I took many more pictures. The next week, we went to the beach just so I could pose in them. After posting these pictures, I got some emails from bikini companies. They wanted to send me their stuff so I could take pictures in them and promote their brands. They offered to pay $100 for each picture. "Oh my gosh, that's great! You get free swimsuits and cash," my boyfriend said. He seemed happier than I was. So that is how I started making money doing something I didn't really enjoy. Aiden convinced me to give him some. He said that if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have had these opportunities in the first place. I figured he was right. I would have never done this on my own. Apparently, guys really love swimsuit pictures. Before I knew it, I had over 200,000 followers. Aiden was so happy, and one day, in the middle of a photo shoot, he had another idea. "I heard that there's a modeling agency in town. They're looking for beautiful women. The audition is tomorrow at 10 in the morning, he said. "But I have school," I replied. "It won't hurt to miss one day. Come on, I'll pick out the outfits," he said, and I eventually agreed. The next day, I did something I never imagined myself doing, walking in a swimsuit in front of a bunch of strangers who were judging my face and body. And do you know what? I was hired. The pay was almost 10 times higher than what I was making in the cafe. "We won't get to work together anymore," I said sadly. "That's fine, you're making so much more money for us," he replied. I started skipping school to go to photo shoots. I was way behind and my grades were falling, but I was happy, I think, because I had the perfect boyfriend and I was making loads of money. I thought that because I became a model, he was more obsessed with me than anyone else. He told me he deleted his secret Instagram page and that he wasn't following those women anymore. I believed him. Until Aiden and I were in his room talking, and he got up to go to the bathroom. I touched my ear and realized that my earring was missing, so I started looking on the floor. I knelt down near the bed, and what I saw under there was shocking. There were tons of magazines with suggestively dressed women on the covers. I pulled one out and flipped through it. It was filled with pictures of models. I pulled another magazine out and saw the same thing. It became obvious to me that he was still obsessed with looking at pictures of other women and nothing I did mattered to him.
What are you doing?
He asked as he walked in on me going through his magazines. Why do you have those? I asked.
It's none of your business what I have in my room,
he said. I stormed out of his room and walked home. When I opened my front door, I heard a voice behind me.
Wait, please don't go.
Aiden had followed me. Leave me alone, I screamed. My dad opened the door.
Honey, why are you screaming? Oh my gosh, why are you crying? What's wrong?
He said. I hadn't even realized I'd been crying. At that point, I was just sick of everything. I told my dad everything I had been through in the past few months with Aiden. I looked at his face and realized I'd never seen him that angry before.
You gave him your money? The money you earned?
He screamed.
Come here, stupid boy,
he said to Aiden. Aiden walked up to him. My dad pulled him inside and threw him on the couch.
Valerie, go upstairs and get your swimsuits,
he said. I did as he asked. My dad then forced Aiden to wear them and took many pictures. He forced Aiden to upload them to his own Instagram page, then asked him to get out of our house. Aiden and I broke up because I realized that I was being manipulated by a guy who didn't really love me. I don't model anymore, and my dad hasn't forced me to get another job. He thinks this was all his fault, and I'm not upset he feels that way. It means I'm his little princess again, and I can get whatever I want.
Mom, what are you wearing? I gasped as I looked at my mother's outfit. Don't you like it, dear? She asked as she smoothed her miniskirt, watching herself in the mirror. I placed my hands on the side of my head and rubbed my temples. Hi, my name is Stephanie. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Remember to also hit that notification bell so you know when a new video is posted. If you do this, your secret admirer will finally reveal themselves. Trust me, it really works. Ever since my father left my mother a few months ago for a younger woman, my mother had been on this craze to try to look and feel younger than she really was. When I asked my mother if everything was okay, she would usually respond with, "I'm fine, dear." But her drastic decision to do plastic surgery told me otherwise. My mother now looked young enough to be my sister. Don't get me wrong, I loved my mother, but her change had definitely affected my social life. A few weeks ago, I went clubbing with my girlfriends. There was cheering going on and a crowd chanting around someone. As curiosity would have it, I got close enough to see what all the commotion was about. There was my mother dancing between two guys who were twice as young as she was. Another incident was when I went to the mall with my mom, and while trying on an outfit, my mother was flirting with boys my age. And what was worse, they were flirting back. I can't even take my mother to the grocery store without her flirting with someone. One time I even caught a guy my age sneaking out the house at 2 a.m. I mean, how does my mother get more action than I do? Today was my 21st birthday, and my mother insisted that we throw a party to celebrate the occasion. At this point, I was not sure if the party was for me or for my mother to flirt with younger guys. While I chose something a bit more conservative, a pair of fitted jeans and a tank top, my mother wore a black miniskirt with a low V-neck halter top. To top off her attire, she wore red stilettos. "Mom, are you really going to wear that outfit in front of all my friends?" I asked. "Sure, why not, dear? I think I look absolutely fabulous," she said as she twirled in front of the mirror. "Can you please wear something else? Something that is more suitable for your age?" "Oh, honey, age is nothing but a number. You are only as young as you feel." My mother squeezed my cheeks as she left the room to welcome the first set of guests. I tried to enjoy myself at the party, but I knew my friends were gossiping about my mother. The guys at the party didn't seem to mind as I watched them trail behind her like wounded puppies who longed for a master. As I watched my mother throughout the night, embarrassment and resentment towards my mother began to build. My mother could play teenager as much as she wanted, but she was no longer a spring chicken, and she needed to start acting like she had some sense. It was time I did something about it. I needed to hook my mother up with someone her age, someone who would bring her down from the "I'm still a teenager" cloud that she was apparently riding on. This new mother was focused so much on trying to be someone that she wasn't that it was affecting not only her job but her relationships with her peers. My friend Diana told me that her mother found a boyfriend on a dating site, and maybe I should create a profile for my mother. So that's exactly what I did. I created a profile for my mother on a dating site. Of course, I used a few of her older photos to add to it. After creating the profile, it only took a few hours before the messages were rolling in. I didn't want my mother to look desperate, so I decided to check them the next day. The next day, my mother had over 100 messages. I did a thorough weeding out as I clicked on every profile of every person that messaged my mother. I narrowed it down to one guy, Nathan Houston. Nathan was a 45-year-old single father of 2 boys. He worked as a clerk in a law firm. "He'll do nicely," I said as I stroked my chin thoughtfully. After chatting with Nathan for about 2 weeks, I decided that it was time for my mother and Nathan to meet. I told my mother that I ordered a book at the mall and asked if she would collect it for me. I told her I had a few assignments to catch up on and I really didn't have the time. I told her that the time for the collection was 12 p.m. and she agreed. Next, I messaged Nathan and asked if he would meet me at the mall, at the bookstore, 12 p.m. I also told him what I, or rather my mother, would be wearing so that he would be able to identify her easily. Once he confirmed, I gave him directions to the mall and the name of the bookstore. The next day, I picked out my mother's outfit and I begged her to put it on. After a few minutes, she agreed, and I sighed in relief. Everything was going according to plan. I asked Diana if she would drop me off at the mall, and she agreed. After my mother left, Diana picked me up and waited in the parking lot for me. I even asked her to borrow some of her clothes so that my mother wouldn't recognize me. I wore a cap, shades, and a hoodie. When I entered the mall, I lingered around stores that were close to the bookstore. I needed this plan to work. I wanted my old mother back. Around 11:50 a.m., I saw Nathan enter the bookstore, and my mother followed a few minutes after. The bookstore was relatively big, so it was easy enough to keep a good view on them without being too close. I was able to corner Nathan. "Hi," I said. "My name is Stephanie." I extended my hand. "You're Patricia's daughter?" Nathan took my hand with a smile. "That's right. I have a small confession to make," I said hesitantly. I proceeded to tell him that I was the one who created the profile for my mother, and that I thought he was the perfect man for her since they had so many things in common. I told him that once she gets to know him and he gets to know her, that I'm sure they would like each other. "If you agree to go along with this, you can't tell my mother about this dating site." I wrung my hands nervously, waiting for him to respond. "You must really love your mother to go through all this trouble for her. Your secret is safe with me. Now let me go find this woman that comes highly recommended by her daughter." Nathan smiled at me and walked away in search of my mother. I peeked from behind the bookshelf and watched as Nathan approached my mother. At first, nothing happened. Then I saw my mother laughing and chatting with Nathan as though they were old friends. That was my cue to leave. Over the next few weeks, I watched as my mother transformed into her old self. Her eyes lit up every time she answered the phone, and she was going out more with her old friends. She never told me that she was dating Nathan, though. I figured that when the time was right, she would tell me on her own. "Stephanie, honey, can you go down to the jeweler's at the mall for me? I forgot to collect my necklace and I would like to wear it tonight," my mother said. "Where are you going?" I asked my mom playfully. "Are you going on a hot date?" "Out, I'm going out," she laughed and said. "Now, could you go? The mall is closing in 45 minutes. She handed me the bill to collect her necklace and I headed to the mall. On the way to the jewelry store, I saw Nathan and I was about to say hi when I watched, in shock, as a woman with 2 little boys trailing behind her swung her arms around Nathan's neck and kissed him. "Hi, Daddy." The boys greeted him. I also noticed something on Nathan's hand that I did not notice the first time we met. He was wearing a wedding ring. I ran out of the mall without my mother's necklace. I hopped into the car and headed home. "Mom is going to kill me, Mom is going to kill me," I repeated as I drove out of the parking lot. I was devastated. I had to tell her what I saw, and I had to tell her how sorry I was. I was going to confess everything to her when I got home. Now, because of me, my mother would suffer another heartbreak. This was way worse than her trying to look like a teenage girl. Maybe I should have just left my mom. Maybe it was just a phase she needed to go through. I sighed heavily as I pulled into our driveway. "Mom, Mom," I yelled as soon as I opened the door. I ran through the house looking for her, but my mother wasn't at home. I saw a note on the kitchen counter that stated Nathan asked her to meet him early. She said that there was dinner in the fridge and that she would be home later and that she loved me. "You won't love me after I tell you what I did," I sighed. I scrambled in my bag and found my cell phone. "Maybe I could get into contact with her before she meets him," I said as I dialed my mother's number. Her phone went straight to voicemail. "Mom, where are you?" I whined helplessly as I repeatedly dialed my mother's number, but got the same result each time. What if Nathan did something to my mom? My face turned white. If anything happened to my mother, I would never be able to forgive myself. I decided to call the police station to see if they could assist me. The officer said that there was nothing they could do about it until 24 hours passed. After 24 hours, if she did not show up, I could then file a missing persons report. My eyes filled with tears at the thought of something happening to my mother. In 24 hours, my mother could be in a trailer on her way to Cuba. My mother could be in danger, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. My mind flooded of all the stories I heard about online dating going wrong. I thought about going to look for her, but I wouldn't know the first place to look. My best bet was to sit tight at home and pray that she came home safe and sound. After a few hours, I finally heard the comforting sound of my mother's voice. "Stephanie, are you home? There's someone I'd like for you to meet." I ran from my bedroom and entered the living room. There he sat, Nathan. Go to hell, Houston. I could feel the rage building inside of me. My mother was nowhere to be seen. I walked up to him. "How dare you do this to my mother? I saw you at the mall today with your wife and kids. What kind of man does that? How long did you think that you would have been able to fool us before the truth came out?" I yelled. Nathan stood up slowly and said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me," I retorted. "As soon as I see my mother, I'm going to tell her what a two-timing jerk you are." Before Nathan was able to respond, I heard my mother's voice behind me. "Stephanie, what is the meaning of this?" "This two-timing jerk..." My voice fell away as I spun around to look at my mother, and my jaw dropped. I looked back at Nathan, and I looked at the man who was standing next to my mother. They were twins. Nathan had an identical brother. My face turned red with embarrassment. I wanted to run away and hide. I stood there at a loss for words, and my mother stood there demanding an explanation. "Well," I said sheepishly, and confessed everything to my mother. I apologized to Nathan for the way I spoke to him, and he accepted gracefully. "I wish my boys were as protective over me as you are protective over your mother," Nathan chuckled. "And," my mother said, "Nathan already confessed about your little plot to set me up." "Name." Nathan called over to his brother. "This is Stephanie, Patricia's daughter. This is the man that you saw today at the mall with his lovely family. My children are teenagers and they are spending the weekend with their mother." I shook Name's hand and smiled. "It's nice to meet you, and I'm sorry." "Oh, it's okay. Just another case of mistaken identity. It has definitely happened one too many times in our lives." Name laughed as he patted Nathan on the back. I was glad that everything worked out. My mother no longer wore outlandish clothes, but clothes that were more suitable for her age, that still made her look attractive. And yes, people who meet us for the first time do ask if my mother is my sister, and I'm okay with that. I got my mother back, and now she's happier than ever.